Greetings and welcome back, gentles and ladiesmen, to another fan-flipping-tastic playthrough here on EPG Plays. I'm EXO, of course, and this, my friends, is Spyro Season of Ice for the Game Boy Advance. Yeah, so I'm actually producing this alongside Into the Dragonfly, just so you guys know, so if I don't mention something that I said in that playthrough, or if something happens in the last session I record that I don't address, that's just how it is. So we're not much options to work with here, so we're gonna go ahead and start a new game.
Hey Spyro! I think I see a flying sheep saucer heading straight for us. Let's get out of here before it abducts us.
That's not a flying sheep saucer, Hunter. It's just a balloon.
Look, there's a note here from Zoe. It says, "Dear Spyro, I'm using every last drop of my magic to send you this message. Someone has cast a powerful spell over the fairy world, freezing fairies in ice crystals, and we can't get out. Now the Rhinox are back and collecting fairies one by one. I wish I knew what they were up to. Please come back before it's too late."
This is terrible. We have to go help Zoe.
And all the fairies.
While you go see what's happening in the fairy world, I'll check the sorceress's spell book for something we can use to find out who's behind all this.
You know, Bianca, I haven't seen you carrying the spell book in a few days.
What do you mean? I never let it out of my sight. It's right in my bag. Oh no! My spell book! Where is it? Oh, I must have left it at the library when I was picking up that travel book for our Dragon Shores vacation. I've got to go find it.
Bianca, while you find your spell book, Hunter, Sparks, and I will go find those fairies.
Okay, see you soon.
Alright, so that's the plot. We are in the fairy realms, and who knows where that is exactly, or the fairy worlds. Can't remember exactly what it said, but yeah. And we'll talk more about the gameplay and stuff in a second. We have some more exposition.
Hi there, Spyro. You'll never guess what I heard just before I got frozen in that crystal. The Rhinox are back. Those smelly Rhinox seem to be all over the fairy worlds.
So yeah, so the evil Rhinox, so if you've played Year of the Dragon, you'll know who they were. The Rhinox are rhino-like enemies who come in many different flavors, and they worked for the villain of Year of the Dragon, the third game, the Sorceress. They were her personal army. But obviously, the Sorceress is dead and gone. She drowned in a pool of purple lava, so I don't think she'll be coming back. Then again, Ripto also drowned in lava, and he somehow came back. Even canonically within the realms of Spyro 2, if you go to the epilogue, Ripto is still alive.
The portal is broken, Spyro. You'll need to rescue more fairies so their magic can help you with the spell to repair the portal.
So that's our incentive to collect, I almost said dragonflies, fairies.
Yo, Spyro, I have a feeling that charging is gonna come in handy on this rescue mission. You might want to practice it a bit. If you press the R button, you can charge. Try charging into those sheep. Press R button to charge.
So fodder and stuff is all back. And yes, I probably should discuss this real quick. What to talk about first? So yeah, Rhinox back. And since the Sorceress is dead and gone, I guess they're unemployed and looking for stuff to do, so evidently they have some new leader who is after fairies for an as of yet unexplained reason.
Thank you, Spyro. I'm not sure what happened, but I was flying over to meet Gabrielle and suddenly I was frozen in that chilly crystal.
And yes, much like Spyro 1, all of the collectibles talk to you. There are a couple ones that'll just say, "You freed so-and-so." So, you know, just kind of like how some dragons would go, "Thank you for releasing me." But yeah, so this is, the Rhinox are after fairies, that's the plot, and we are in a new setting. Yeah, so I guess in terms of gameplay, one thing we should probably discuss is that this is obviously different from the previous Spyro games in that it is on a 2D console, The GBA could do some 3D, but obviously it's not going to be able to do anything as advanced as the first 3 Spyro games, so that's kind of out of the question. Spyro, my funny seeing you again. It must be fate. Well, it seems haiku poets aren't as profitable as I'd heard, so I came here and struck up a deal with the Rhinox. I'm getting paid a fortune by a very large Rhinox to keep this insect-infected level restricted from dragons. Come to think of it, he never did mention anything about dragonflies. I suppose letting a dragon fly through wouldn't cause any harm now, would it? Especially if you were to pay me, say, a small fee? Well, don't worry, Spyro. I'm sure the screams of tiny fairies shall stop soon enough. So yeah, all of our favorite characters are back, including Moneybags, Bianca, Hunter the Cheetah. Zoe's in this game too, but she doesn't have as big of a role. One thing I do have to appreciate right off the bat, just story-wise, before we get into gameplay stuff with this game, is I do appreciate the fact that there was an effort on behalf of Digital Eclipse, who were the developers of the 3 GBA Spyro games, to try to keep continuity, at least with this game. Like, after this, they kind of start to drift off into their own thing, but there's still little references to the original trilogy here and there, but it's not like Vicarious Visions 3 GBA Crash games, where it just seems like, they just kept remaking Crash 3 over and over again on GBA, Like, these games feel like their own thing, but they also feel like, sort of tributes to the original trilogy. Like, they don't change too much. They try to preserve the gameplay as best that they can on this new console, so kudos to them. Let's see. And, yeah, so this is obviously an isometric 2D or 3D platforming game, and the GBA Spyro games, in my opinion, not this game so much for reasons we'll discuss later.
Spyro, I think I see something sparkling over on that far hill. You'll have to glide to get across to it. Press the A button to jump, then press the A button again while you're in the air to glide.
By the way, this game has no voice acting, so I decided that I would put my lovely chops to the test for you folks at home.
Spyro, if you need to look far into the distance, hold down the L button and move the control pad in the direction you want to see.
And that is a very useful move indeed for this game, because if you don't know how to do that, there's some platforming in this game and some secret areas of the level that can be very difficult to reach without it, so highly recommend taking advantage of that. So
it was getting awfully frosty in that crystal. Thanks for saving me.
So yeah, as you can see, what to talk about? Yeah, so isometric platforming game, and those seem to have kind of a bad rep for the most part, I find. Not undeservedly, because some of them are really bad and haven't aged that well, but in my opinion, the second 2 Spyro games on GBA are some of the best isometric games ever made, and we'll talk more about those when we play them, but Season of Ice has a few problems, so yeah.
Okay, Spyro, I know you're ready for this. To reach that far hill, you can get there by hovering. To hover, just press the A button at the end of your glide.
And with that, that should be the last of the gems in this level, if I'm not mistaken. Yep, and this fairy right here.
Don't worry about falling in the fairy world, Spyro. If you fall into the fairy world, our magic will rescue you.
Good job, Spyro. We've got a lot of fairies to rescue.
Alright, and with that, I believe we have terminated this level. Yes, we're done. So we can go ahead and head into an actual level now. So yeah, isometric 2D platformer. And okay, so I do have a couple things I wanted to just discuss right away in terms of this game. And we'll go play Mermaid Coast first because why not? Is that this game, I think, actually does a really good job translating all of the mechanics and ideas from the previous 3D Spyro games to this isometric format. Like, you've got gems to collect, you've got NPCs to interact with. If you've ever played the PlayStation Spyro games using a D-pad, the controls actually feel right. You know what I mean? Like, if you've played the 3D Spyro games on a PSP and you only had the D-pad to work with, like, it feels like the PlayStation games with the D-pad. So they actually nailed that pretty well.
Oh, thank goodness, Spyro, you're here! Those mean old Rhinox are making such a mess of everything and ruining my tan! Please make them go away so we can enjoy the beach.
Okay, so, and obviously you jump, you glide, you hover, there's fire breath. Rhinox are back, which is, you know, always great because I loved them in Year of the Dragon. And I don't know, and like the platforming feels just fine to me. Like, obviously, if you've never played this before, it's going to take some adjustment because you're not going to know how it works, but yeah. And wow, practice playthrough did me more good than I expected because I remember more of the level design than I expected. So this game has some problems. I think it is by far the worst Spyro game on the GBA. Well, in terms of the Digital Eclipse trilogy, like we're not counting Spyro Orange and Crash Purple in that group of games. In terms of the 3 isometric platforming GBA Spyro games developed by Digital Eclipse, I think that Season of Ice is the worst. And there are a few different reasons for that, and I feel like there is a really good game that's trying to get out of here, but it has a few annoying quirks to it that unfortunately kind of make it an inferior product compared to its successors. And we'll discuss that more when we play those games, but I almost forgot to talk to this guy.
I'm so nervous. I met this mermaid, Stacy, and wow, was she pretty. She's supposed to meet me on the beach tonight, but the Rhinox turned off all the lighthouses, so I'm afraid she might get lost. I'm sure your flame breath could light the lighthouses.
That's why we're lighting lighthouses, just in case you didn't know. Alright, so there should be another platform over here. By the way, the enemies in this game can be kind of annoying because, you see that water there? Instant kill. If you fall in that water, you're dead.
Gee, Spyro, thank you!
And if you die in this game, it is a major setback. Because, you know those little sandcastles we've been destroying? If you die, they all come back and you have to get them all over again. I'm not kidding. And that is pretty much the biggest problem with this game as far as I'm concerned, is that it's so easy, like even if you're trying your hardest not to fall, you know, it is so easy to get nuked off of a platform by an enemy you can't see and then have to redo a bunch of shit.
Thanks for the thaw out, Spyro.
So that's the big problem that I'm gonna bring up right away, just that it's, you know, it's on the table. And you know, it does kind of pain me to have an opinion like this of Season of Ice, because I do actually really like the other 2 Spyro GBA games a lot. Like Season of Flame is like probably, if I had to rank all of my favorite Spyro games, Season of Flame would probably be number 4 behind the original trilogy because it's really, really, really good. But Season of Ice, on the other hand, despite having very similar controls and also being an isometric platformer and all that good stuff, by the way, chests are back and they're almost always at the beginning of the level, so once you find the key, just backtrack to the beginning of the level if you can remember where it is, and you can do that real quick. But yeah, and it's unfortunate because, you know, the GBA Spyro games were my childhood. I did not have a PlayStation growing up. I did not even know about the original Spyro trilogy back in the day. So my exposure to the series was through, like, see, like, I made one little mistake and now I have to redo all of those sandcastles. And I really don't know why. Was it really that hard to save that? Or, you know, set up a variable and whatnot? I don't know, like, I pretty much know where they all are because I practiced, but it's really annoying to have one little mistake like that basically force you to redo the level. And every time you die, the NPCs start talking your ear off again. I don't know why. It's like they couldn't make a variable for that either. Seems like a really easy fix, but I digress. And if you lived in Japan, you actually got a much better deal on Spyro Season of Ice, because there's actually a map system in the Japanese version of Spyro Season of Ice. It's called Spyro Advance in Japan, but it's the same game as far as I can tell, with some minor graphical differences. But yeah, I was gonna play that version, but then I was like, you know, I kind of want to do the voice acting, so yeah, and that's pretty much why. And I've already practiced, and you would not believe how much a practice playthrough makes a difference for this game in terms of knowing how to navigate the levels, because second biggest problem with Spyro Season of Ice is that the levels are giant mazes, and which means that if you aren't familiar with them, they're really hard to navigate. So like when you think back to the original Spyro trilogy, we'll talk more about that in just a second.
You're my hero, Spyro!
When you think back to the original PS1 trilogy, when you think about level design, the way that levels were laid out in Spyro 1, 2, and 3, you know, especially in Spyro 3, with, you know, it's kind of became a donut shape, is that levels were relatively linear compared to other 3D platformers like Banjo-Kazooie or Mario 64. Well, the first half of Mario 64. In that there was kind of a main path, right? And then once you got to the end of that main, and there were, you know, branching areas off the side of that main path, but for the most part, there was like a linear way forward that gave the level some structure, you know? And along the sides of that main path, there were some, you know, side pathways and stuff for you to go do side quests and whatnot. And then by the time you got to game number 3 and Enter the Dragonfly,
Dude, you were totally gnarly frying all those Rhinox. And hey, I found this when I caught this killer wave yesterday. You can have it, man.
and that's another thing I really hate about this game, but we'll talk about that in a second.
You were great, Spyro, and Stacy found me right away.
Oh, Stanley, I hope that it's okay that I'm early. I was just so excited to see you. Spyro, maybe you'd like this funny seashell I found on my way here. I don't really want to carry it around all evening.
There's another fairy to say it, rescue. You rescued Rachel. Okay. And yes, all the fairies are girls, just like how all the dragons in Spyro 1 were male. I don't know how they reproduce. Maybe they're like Namekians, and they, you know, shoot the eggs out of their mouths. If you've watched Dragon Ball, you'll know what I'm talking about, but if you haven't, then you're gonna be really confused. Yeah, so that's one thing I really hate about this game, is that you'll just be kind of minding your own business and, you know, playing the level like normal. Then all of a sudden you'll defeat the last enemy of the level, or, you know, something like that, and then it will just warp you over to some other place, like without your consent. And that's really annoying. Like I destroyed the last sandcastle, and it's gonna warp me to a random sandcastle. Then I have to figure out how to get back to where I was. So definitely get all the gems and stuff right away. That'll make so that if it warps you away, you at least don't have to come back for that. And I'm pretty sure we're still missing the sandcastle one. So somewhere around this level is a sandcastle, and that, like I was talking about with in terms of level design, is that it's really difficult to know where everything is if you haven't played the game before, because unlike the original trilogy, there is no main drag in these levels. There is no main path. It's more like your typical Banjo-Kazooie first half of Super Mario 64 kind of game design, where it's kind of a big open area with a bunch of set pieces in it. Like, I don't know, there are maybe like 8 or 10 islands laying around this area. And, you know, it's, once you've played the game before, like I said, I was surprised how much of a difference a practice playthrough makes. So I hit the last one, and it warps me to this random sandcastle. So if I had missed something over on that island, I would have to backtrack to it.
Thanks, Spyro!
But thankfully, we are done with this level, so we can leave. And just like the original trilogy, you can press start and exit level whenever you want, so no biggie there. But yeah. And that pretty much sums up all of the problems with this game, actually. but they are so pervasive and consistent. Like there's the fact that it's so easy to fall off the edge and die. Falling off the edge and dying resets the level, so you have to redo a bunch of shit constantly. The NPCs keep talking your ears off no matter how many times you've already talked to them. And the levels are big mazes, and those problems together, they kind of interlock and reinforce each other. And it makes Season of Ice kind of a pain in the butt to play. Now, that said, I do think there's a lot of fun to be had in Season of Ice despite that. Like, I don't mind having a little bit of extra challenge, and having a concrete reason not to die, because in the previous games that really wasn't a factor. And it's like I said, this game is more fun for me now because I already know how it works.
I'm so glad to see you, Spyro. Those Rhinox let their pet pterodactyls off the leashes, and now they're ruining my cactus crop. I bet you can help me out. Just try flaming those cactus bombs over there and onto the geysers. That should do the trick.
So you can see that this level is kind of based on Skelos Badlands. Like, it looks a lot like Skelos Badlands. There are dinosaurs to fight, as well as Rhinox and stuff. So usually how it will work in these stages is that there's usually reliably the same missions in every level.
My dear Spyro, those nasty Rhinox are trampling my cactus garden and ruining my crops. I know that my brother Fang and I would dearly appreciate it if you could clear a path for us.
So usually there are a set number of missions in each level in Season of Ice. The first one is usually killing all the Rhinox. Usually there will be an NPC who's like, get rid of the Rhinox. That's kind of like Spyro 3, it's kind of the same thing.
Thanks for rescuing me, Spyro. I heard that some fairies hide around flammable objects. Check everywhere, Spyro. You never know what you might find.
And in this level, that flammable object would be the flowers. So yeah, usually kill all the... It's kind of like Spyro 3, how the plot of every level was Rhinox showed up and did a thing. Kill the Rhinox and help us out. And take the world back from the sorceress and whatnot. So that is very much the case with Season of Ice as well. The plot is almost always Rhinox showed up and did a thing, but it's even more homogenized than that in the sense that literally the plot is always kill the Rhinox. And that does get kind of old, honestly. The second mission is these flammable objects here. Then there are usually 3 fairies just hiding around a level, and then there's usually one mission that's unique to each level. So in this level in Lava Prairie here, it is killing these pterodactyls with these cactuses, or cacti, sorry. It's been a while since I took that class, you'll understand. So what you gotta do is you gotta push this little thingy, this little cactus, into the geyser, and then that will kill the pterodactyl. If it fucking thing would go in. There we go. Then we got another one of these over here. So I guess my recommendation for playing these levels and making them easier for yourself, because of how they're laid out and how maze-like they can be if you don't already know them well, is I highly recommend playing the Japanese version. Because let's face it, the stuff that the characters have to say really isn't that interesting and isn't worth all the fumbling around, So if you play the Japanese version, you can press the select and L buttons together, and it will pull up a map screen that will show you where you are in the level and give you kind of an overview of it. And that alone makes this game so much more enjoyable to play, because it gives you a better idea of, oh, I haven't been to a platform that's shaped like that. Maybe I missed some gems there or something, you know what I mean? And the second Spyro game on GBA, Season of Flame, does have that feature as well, and they even improved it. But the North American version of Spyro Season of Ice does not have the map. Only the Japanese version does. And even when this game got re-released in a 2-pack with Season of Flame, like it's like a 2-in-1 Game Boy Advance game dealio, they did not port the map feature over from the Japanese version when they did that. So yeah, so go play Spyro Advance, which is the Japanese version, I think you will have a lot more fun with that version because of the map. Or if you want to keep the dialogue in the game, because that, I know usually it's not that difficult to figure out what the level exclusive missions are. Usually it's pretty self-explanatory, you know? But if you want the dialogue for whatever reason, there are maps online that you can look at that are basically ripped from the Japanese version. Those could make your life easier. So definitely give that a shot if you're interested in playing this game. Those are the two methods I recommend. Playing the North American version as it is not super great, honestly, and it's got some issues.
You're the greatest, Spyro!
So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. We did a bit of a longer part for this first one anyway, but yeah, I'll see you guys in part 2, and we'll continue through Lava Prairie.